Hi guys, my name is Jacqueline. I've been working for the program the last 3 years, and today I'm going to take you guys through what I usually do for my warm-up. I start with my ankles, and then I'm just gradually going to work up like through the body. A few takeaways is that one, I am dedicating my life to training now, meaning I have the time to spend and prioritize my warm-up, making sure that I stay injury-free and moving well. For you guys that don't have 45 to 60 minutes warming up every day, you have to pick and choose. So choose the movements that you feel are not smooth, or the parts of your body that you need to work specifically on. And I hope you get something useful out of the video in that. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to start with ankles. We like to mix it up with some static positions and then also some dynamics. So what I will always do is start with just a typical ankle stretch. Most gyms have a kettlebell, so that's a great tool to use to just add that extra weight on your knee to force your knee or your ankle into more of a dorsiflexion. Good ankles are very important in CrossFit because we have so many movements where we have to squat. So we have thrusters, we have wobbles, overhead squats, pistol squats, and if you don't have good dorsiflexion, these movements are going to be harder for you and they're not going to be as efficient. So quite simple, you put the kettlebell on your knee and you force your knee forward over your toes. So the dorsiflexion is basically the ability to press your knee forward in a way. Yeah. I would hold this for at least 90 seconds each leg, and it's very important that you feel it in the back of the leg. For those of you that feel more of just an impingement on the front, I'd recommend using a band. And what you simply do is that you take the band in where you feel that you have the joint, you put the band, you go forward, and then do exactly the same. So I actually have to do this on my right foot because after my injury, it's pinching in the front, and by adding the band, you would just make the joint move a bit smoother, yeah? So, like I said, it's important you feel it on the back. If it's pinching on the front, grab a band, fix on the front of the ankle, and then just do exactly the same. Move it a bit around till you find the position where it's stretching on the back for you, yeah? So that's the most important of the first one. Good? So we're going to continue also with the ankle. So the foot is quite complex, and for the ankle to move well, you need to make sure that your foot is actually not like too stiff. I would start my day with a lacrosse ball or a rumble roller to just kind of loosen up the areas that are especially tight. But another good one, so as you can see, I've taken my shoes off now, and just to get that kind of stretch of the foot, you'd actually just sit down in a kneeling position with your toes under you, trying to fight for your heels to be together, and just sit here to kind of try to relax. This is just to kind of stretch the toes a bit, and then making sure the foot is moving well, because if the foot is not moving well, it might transfer over to your ankles and then to the hips eventually, yeah? So I would sit in this position for a minute to 90 seconds every day as well, making sure it's feeling good. Once this is feeling good, I just go into doing them dynamic, yeah? So I just shift back and forth. Here you're then getting the same kind of stretch on your toes, but you're also getting the dorsiflexion. So I'll rock back and forth a bit depending on how I'm feeling that day, so like 10 to 20 reps. And then to get a bit more of the back, I'd start doing it dynamic. So roll back and up, through, yeah. So the ankles is one of the things, like, kind of either you have it or you're not, and that's not completely true. You can obviously improve it, but there's a lot of people that they have very good ankles, and if that's you, there's no point for you to put a lot of time into improving your dorsiflexion because it's already good enough. A good test is to see if you can do a feet together squat and hold the bottom position relatively comfortable, then you have good enough dorsiflexion. I'm in between, my ankles are not like horrendous, but not great either, so I need to continue working on it. I can do a feet together squat, but I have to fight when I'm sitting in the bottom position of the feet together squat, which is why I'm then still working on my ankles and trying to constantly improve it. Okay, so we're going to be moving over to the hips. The hips is one of the joints or the places where a lot of people often find that they get sore and it gets tense, and a lot of CrossFitters would struggle with a hip impingement. So you have to cover the internal rotation of the hip is very important. So, and that is like your ability to, like I said, internally rotate your hip. So you should be able to sit in this position relatively comfortable. Ideally, you should have 90 degrees in both legs, being able to sit upright. So you would see a lot of people sitting like this. That's a result of the internal rotation of the hip not being good, yeah? So you should be able to sit upright and rotate back and forth. And you will feel a nice stretch on the inside of the hips. So this is also, this is a movement that I'll be doing every day. Every time where you do a wide squat, you will engage more of the hips. So more of the weight will be on the hips. When you have a narrow stance in the squat, you're relying more on your ankle mobility, and then the wider you go, the more the hips play into role. The hips obviously do play a role every time we do squats, but that's, you kind of vary it. So I would do, again, depending on how I feel that day, anywhere from 10 to 30 reps here until it's starting to feel smooth, yeah? Another one that I really like doing, and that's more of also strengthening exercise, and it's very good if you do feel that you are very tight in front of the hips. And that's what we call an active hip extension. So you go back, fighting to keep the body straight, and up again. And you will feel that you have to work your quads quite a bit. It's quite a nice exercise to just release off, yeah? And again, I'll be doing 10 to 15, depending on my time and how I'm feeling. The final one, which arguably is my favorite, because you will hit all the sides of all the directions of the hip, is what we call the hip flow. So this is John's masterpiece, if we can say it like that. So we're gonna hit all the direction of the hip. The first one is gonna be more targeting the hamstrings. And you just start with a bent knee, and you just straighten the leg. Bend, straighten. As you lean forward and keep the back straight and nice, yeah? So that's the first one. Again, I'll be doing about 20 reps here. Then I would twist around, toe pointing forward, and I'll be rotating forward instead. Now I'm feeling more the same that I was doing in the chin box, the internal rotation of the hip. And I'll be doing about 20 reps here as well. Then rotate, and now straightening and shooting the hip more forward instead, and you feel a nice stretch on the front. And then the final is where you put your leg on the box like this. You're facing the box and you're leaning forwards. If you do this right, you should feel this then more on your glutes, yeah? And again, about 20 repetitions depending on how you're feeling. Yeah, those are my go-to and favorite exercises that I would do for my hips getting ready for a big training day. I might also do just a normal straddle stretch a day if I feel like that's needed, but these are definitely the 3 that I will be doing every day. Yeah, now we'll be going over to more of the lower back, so we'll be changing over to the wall again. Okay, so lower back. A healthy and happy back should be able to rotate, it should be able to flex and extend, yeah? And it's very important that we keep the back moving in all of those directions for it to be, like I said, strong and happy. A lot of people fear kind of rounding the back, and you should have respect for lifting heavy things up from the floor. And the back is, we only have one back and we need to look after it. However, you should be able to touch the floor without, pain or struggling. We've all Like, I think everyone has probably had a day where the back has been very tight and you know how hard it is to put your socks on. So keeping it moving in all direction is very important. And what I would be doing is what we call like wall ball play. So if you pay attention to my feet, I actually turn them in. This is to eliminate more of like the movement of the hip, so it focuses even more on the back. Yeah, so I look a bit funny, but that doesn't mind. So the first one, I simply just rotate. Yeah, so I get the rotation of the lower back in. Just going side to side. And you're choosing the distance from the wall depending on how flexible you are. But the goal is to just touch it, yeah? That's the first one. Next one is then flexion and extension. So I'd go a bit further away from the wall now. I'm pointing my toes forward. Now you just go between the legs and then over your head. Between, over. So that's my go-to for the lower back, just to get it moving in all directions before I start my training day. We're going to be moving on to the upper body now. So I always start my day hanging, just dead hang, just to get a nice stretch and then decompress a bit, yeah? And it's just quite simply just dead hang, not engaging, but just getting a good stretch. I would change it up a bit. So some days I might hang neutral. Others, I would take my hands together and have a narrow grip. And others, I might actually hang a bit wider, yeah? So I mix it up. But every day I'll be hanging just dead like this for 1 minute, just to loosen up. After that, I usually move to something that we call thoracic rotations. And we've got two different types. First one is that you grab, I always use the rack, so you just grab with one hand over, and then you use the other to point, and you're kind of trying to reach. This gives a very good stretch of the upper back of your body, basically. Yeah, so good rotation. I quite often can struggle with quite tight traps and that my back locks, and this is very nice for me. So I'll be doing 20 each arm like this, and the next one, I grab it in front, and I do my reaches over instead, yeah? So this is the dynamic way, but you kind of you open it up, and it feels quite loose and nice afterwards. You should give it a go, especially if you do struggle with tight upper back and in between the scapulas, yeah? After that, I'll be moving to the shoulders, starting with the internal rotation. Because of the type of joint the shoulder is, it's a socket and ball joint, but it's quite open. Meaning, and you probably all also heard about people dislocating their shoulder. That is exactly because of the type of joint it is. So it's quite open, which is why we can move the shoulders in all kind of direction. The hip is the same kind of joint, but it's a bit more closed. So it has a bit more support than the shoulder. We can still move the hip in all direction, but it's not as kind of mobile as the shoulder. Meaning that if you have very flexible shoulders, but they're not strong and you can't support them in that position, chances are that you might get injured. Because of this, we often combine the shoulder mobility with strength exercises as well. So you kind of strengthen and mobilize at the same time. So the first one I'm going to be doing is the windmill, which if you have been doing the program and following us through the years, we put it in the programming many times. And we've also put it as accessory pieces to inform you guys on Instagram. But you start, I always highlight the importance of keeping the wrists straight and strong in these kind of exercises. And you should think of it like a pole. So you should imagine that you have a pole through your body. You can rotate around the pole, but as soon as you deviate out to the sides, it's kind of breaking, yeah? So try to just rotate straight through and around the pole. So we're rotating down and up again. Down and up. And this movement of the shoulder is the important one, yeah? So you get the rotation. If you can't go all the way down, that is fine, just as long as you get the internal rotation when you're going down. Yeah, that's the first one I'll be doing. So if we think a bit more practical, every time you will be doing a ring dip, bottom of a push-up, bottom of a burpee, wide overhead squat, you will be internally rotating your shoulder a bit. And these exercises is more of a safe way to strengthen the shoulder in that position. It's quite a vulnerable position. So by doing this work in your warm-up, you will reduce your risk of getting injured and getting shoulder trouble, which a lot of CrossFit athletes do have. The next one I would do is a static position, and it's also targeting the internal rotation, but it's more, like I said, it's static and quite safe. So I'm starting like I'm supposed in the same position as I would if I were to do a Turkish get up, but I'm just rotating around, making sure the shoulder is in an internal rotated position, and then I'll be holding this position for about 90 seconds. So I got a 12 kilo kettlebell here now. Usually I've been doing it with 16, and it was kind of a rule of thumb, like males should be able to do this for 90 seconds with a 24 kilo kettlebell relatively easily, and girls should be able to do it with 16 for 90 seconds. If you can't do that, then you do have you have work to do ahead. That being said, I don't want you to push towards the 16 or 24 straight away, yeah? So rather start light and then gradually build up, and then maybe in 4 weeks you will be able to do 16. But it's very important that you don't overload the shoulders straight away, because now you found this new exercise and you want to do it every day, yeah? So gradually building up. Okay, moving on, I'm just going to grab a PVC. So that was like 2 exercises for the internal rotation. And we also need to have good flexion and being able to extend in CrossFit. Like every time we're doing push presses, push jerks, split jerks, we're in we have a narrow grip on the bar, and we're not having the internal rotation as when we're wider, so we do have to be able to extend the arms as well. And this is one of my favorites. I'm using the kettlebell as a reference point, yeah? So the goal is to be able to smoothly get the PVC pipe over the kettlebell without touching. I'm just going to show you now how it would look. So measure the distance just before you go down, so you should see that you can, okay, my thumbs are halfway through. Then you're going to grab the PVC in what normally be your like jerk grip, have it in a back rack, and then just slow and control like you're doing behind the neck strict presses, but we're doing it on the ground with the PVC. Head should be just resting on the ground. You should relax the upper body, not like head up and tense neck, but just relax your head, and then the goal is to push straight up, yeah? Very important note here is that you have to fight for full extension at the top. If you only go here, you're losing a bit of the point of the exercise, yeah? So you need to fight all the way up and then back again. We've been doing this in different ways. Some days I will do 10 to 12 reps, slow and control back and forth like I just did. Others I might be doing it as a reverse, like a Tabata. So I have 10 seconds in back hold, back rack, 20 seconds over the kettlebell, 10-second back rack hold, 20 seconds over the kettlebell. I'll be doing that 4 times. 8 is it's quite heavy, I haven't done that yet, but 4 times is quite a good time domain to do it, so play about with it and see what works for you. So that's one of the exercises I'll be doing. Next up, I really do like the SOTS press. It's got a good transfer over to a lot of the things that we have to do in CrossFit. So you will be sitting in the bottom of the squats, you will be working the position that you do need for having a nice squat, and then simply just press up. Here, to get the most out of the exercise, you have to fight for staying straight, yeah, and full lockout of the arm. This would be working a bit against the goal of the exercise, yeah, because now you're internally rotating to make it easier, and we're trying to get the flexion and extension, not internal rotation. So fight for staying, like kind of locking the upper body and then just pushing straight up. Down again, straight up. Okay guys, so that was one example of how you could be choosing the movements and going through your warm-up every day before you start your training. Like I said in the start of the video, you have to choose the movements that you feel that you need to work on in the areas that you need to work on specifically. We do have a couple of articles up as well covering warm-up, where you will get even more movements specifically for the different parts of the body, yeah? So if you feel like you're missing out on something, or there's a specific part of the body that you need to be working even more on, just check out those articles. But like I said, this was one example of how you could put it all together into covering the whole body. It will take you about 35 to 40 minutes if you do it properly, so you have to, like I said, think and prioritize depending on what you need, yeah? If you have any questions, just put them in the comments below, and we hope you learned something new today. Take care.